Well, good morning, Movement Conversations. Hope you're doing well. It is Thursday, March 12th at 10:40 in the morning. This podcast was supposed to go up yesterday, but it didn't. It didn't. I was battling pollen, allergies, runny nose, coughing yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I ain't feeling it today. So I come in this morning. We're getting the podcast recorded for you, and hopefully you'll be able to watch it this afternoon if everything goes all right. Got a little bit of weather coming in today. It's going to get cold again. I feel like I'm a weather forecaster now. It's going to get cold again. Going to be breezy. Everybody thought that spring was here, but nanny boo boo, it ain't here. So I want to talk today a little bit about something that is kind of just, I think, very real and very powerful. Something I think that is very what a lot of people deal with, and that is the thought of the middle, about being stuck in the middle. That old TV show, Malcolm in the Middle. I think for a lot of people, that's how they feel. They feel like they're Malcolm in the middle. They feel like they're stuck in the middle. They feel like there's no out. There's no way. It's just a moment where you are just kind of just bombarded in the state of limbo. And it's a reality that for a lot of people, we just don't talk about, because I think the problem is most people become comfortable quitting in the middle. Most people don't quit at the beginning. They quit in the middle. They quit about halfway through something. It's getting too heavy. It's getting too difficult. I don't know how to manage it. I don't know how to walk through it. And so the instinctive notion for a lot of people is that we just quit because the beginning is exciting. I was talking to a pastor friend of mine this morning, and we were talking about ministry and life. And he said, to keep them, he said, well, how was it said? If you got to build a circus to keep them coming, you got to keep a circus. If you got to build a circus to get them, you got to keep a circus to keep them coming. Because everybody likes the beginning of something. Everybody likes the starting of something. That's where the vision is fresh. That's where the energy is high. That's where dreams feel possible. That's where people are giving and they're sowing and they're doing. And yeah, let's do it. Let's build. Let's dream. Let's do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And then that's the point where everybody's motivated. A new ministry, a new business, a new discipline, whatever it is, a new commitment to God. But quitting rarely happens at the start, because that's what we're excited about. That's where we believe it's possible. We believe it can work out. It can happen. And so everybody's gung-ho. But then somewhere in the middle, it slows down. Somewhere in the middle, reality starts to set in. Somewhere in the middle, we're not digging foundations anymore. Now we're just waiting for inspections. And now the weather stopped us. And I'm speaking metaphorically on the natural side of things, but in the spiritual side of things, stuff like that does happen. In the middle is where excitement, if I can be honest, the middle of something is where excitement fades and effort just becomes routine. So we started off, this new ministry, we started off this new thing or whatever it is in your life, whatever you're doing. And in the middle of it, it's where you have to push on through. When we started Friday morning prayer at 5 a.m., thankfully people are still coming to it. But it was really exciting to begin with. But now it's like, okay, so Friday morning, what are we doing? We're praying. Friday morning, 5 a.m., what are we doing? We're praying. That means that my whole day on Thursday is dictated getting ready so I can get to bed early on Friday night. I can get a rest because I know that 4 o'clock Friday morning, we're up and we're going to hit the ground running, and we're going to be praying by 5 o'clock, and we're going to pray for an hour. And then our day is getting started. So now we're in those rows now where everybody's excited about it when it starts. Everybody wants to be a part of it when it starts, but it's in the middle that the excitement fades. Maybe people don't come like they did or whatever. And now the effort becomes routine. It's where the work gets heavier than expected, and the results, they often take longer than you imagine. So we dreamed to do something real big, and we thought it happened in a week's time, but now it's taking a few years. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the middle space is where people start asking the quiet questions. Is this really working? Did I hear God right? Should I keep going? The middle is where faith stops being theory and starts becoming endurance. The middle is where faith stops becoming theory and starts becoming endurance. It's not just something I'm thinking about doing, but now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So now I'm walking through what I've talked about. I started out this faith journey, but now the endurance is having to kick in, and I'm having to walk through this thing. Here's something I've learned over the years, and it's taken a long time to learn this. Excitement starts the journey, but endurance finishes it. Excitement starts the journey, but endurance finishes it. The middle is where you discover what and who you have. The middle, when everything gets kind of routine, everybody's getting excited about Easter. We're getting ready towards Easter. We're ramping towards Easter. The weeks are building towards Easter. The messages are building towards Easter. The commitments, the plans, the ideas, the visions, they're all building towards Easter. But when Easter hits and Easter's over, we begin to, not that we plateau, but we begin to kind of, all right, now we're back in this workflow again and we're building to something else. See, the excitement starts the journey, but endurance is what finishes. So now after Easter, we're having to reprogram. We're having to make modifications. We're having to get people onboarded, whatever it is. If it's your life, that's for a pastor. If it's your life, this has happened or that's happening. So excitement starts the journey. It's like going on a trip to you got a big vacation, going to Disney World or going on a cruise or going something other. You're doing something. And it's all exciting when it starts off. But then you're like, okay, so it's the last day of vacation. I got to pack. I got to get ready to go home. That's where the endurance kicks in. The middle is where you discover which one you have, either excitement or endurance. The race is not giving to the swift. Remember that it's not giving to the swift. You got to have endurance. So why is the middle so difficult? The middle is challenging because it's the least visible part of the journey. You go on a big trip, nobody thinks about the middle of the journey. We think about the beginning and the end of the journey. We're getting started or we're ending the journey or we're getting started. Nobody thinks about the middle. The only good thing about the middle is you get to go to Buc-ee's on the way down to Florida. The middle is challenging because it is the least visible part of the journey. Beginnings get attention. New church plants, revivals, ministries, outreaches, whatever it is, building a new house, starting a new job. All of that is the beginning. The beginning gets the attention. Everybody's excited before the baby gets here, but when the baby gets here, everybody's coming to see the baby. When everybody goes home, and guess what you got to do? You got to raise the baby. Everybody that come in said, "Ooh, goo, ga, we love your little baby. The baby's so cute." They ain't there with you at 2 a.m. while that baby's screaming. Got the colic, want something to eat. The middle is where you feel unnoticed. The middle is where you feel unnoticed. It's where you're putting in effort and you're staying committed. You're showing up, but the progress feels slow and the results don't look impressive yet. And if you are not careful, and what I've noticed is that's where discouragement begins to creep into your life. Because you're working, you're striving, you're doing, I'm at this new job, I'm in this new house, I'm in this new marriage, I'm in this new home, whatever it is, this new ministry, whatever it is. It's all excited. People come to church, when they first come to our church, they're all excited about our church when they first come. But then the excitement wears off and it's not a bad thing, but now we got to get to work. So you've been coming for a while, let's get you serving, let's get you doing something. We're not just called to sit, we're called to do. And the progress often feels slow and results don't look impressive. And that's where, for example, we're in literally the last days of remodeling our house. They're putting the garage door up today. They're doing some punch work, and then I'm going to get a CO, and they're going to grade it, and I'm going to be done. It was exciting when they were digging the foundations. It was exciting when they put walls up. But the past few days, it's been like, let's just get done. I don't care if the carpet's going in. I don't care if the tiles going in. Let's just get done. Because when you're starting out, you're seeing all this big stuff happen. And then at the end, all this little tedious stuff happens. But the tedious stuff is needed so you can get in the house. And so don't get discouraged when discouragement creeps in. Make up in your mind, hey, there's a bigger end coming in this thing. Because when effort is high, visible reward is low. And people start questioning, and I notice this in churches and leadership, people will often question whether or not the journey is worth continuing. But here's a truth that is often easy to forget. The middle is where most real growth happens. It is. Character grows there. Faith deepens there. Discipline forms there. The beginning reveals the excitement, but the middle reveals the conviction. And conviction is what keeps you moving when feelings disappear. That's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you apprehending. That's what causes you not to want to quit when everything around you tells you to quit. When this podcast first started, it was like, man, this is great. People are coming on. And like all of a sudden, it's kind of it's kind of plateaued a little bit, which is fine because we're still growing. We're still becoming. So remember what I just said. In the middle, character forms there. Faith deepens there. Discipline forms there. The beginning reveals the excitement, but the middle reveals the conviction. And the conviction is what keeps you moving when feelings disappear. There was a guy in the Bible named Joseph, and Joseph lived a life in the middle. One of the clearest biblical examples of the middle is Joseph. Joseph receives a dream from God about his future. It's powerful, it's clear, it's the reality of what's going to happen, but the path from the dream to the fulfillment was anything but easy. My God, it was anything but easy. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison. And all of this happens, years and years pass while the dream seems further and further. You get a dream from God. Oh, this is going to be great. And next thing you know, your brothers have sold you. You're in slavery. You're being falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. You're thrown into prison, but you got this dream in front of you. Most people would have quit. They'd quit. They'd have stopped. I ain't doing all this. And rightfully so. Good Lord. Sometimes you just get tired of fighting. Sometimes you just get burnt out and stressed out and worn out, and you're like, I'm just done. I'm finished. And Joseph was living in what we would call the middle season. And here's the tension in the text, and here's the tension in life. The promise was real, but the process was painful. I don't know who needs to hear that this morning, but sometimes you have to know that even though the promise can be real, the process is often painful. Joseph had every reason to believe something had gone wrong. Maybe I'm out of the will of God. Maybe I've sinned. Maybe I've messed up. Maybe I didn't hear God correctly. But scripture shows us something very important. God wasn't ignoring Joseph. What was God doing? While Joseph was in the middle, God was preparing Joseph. We think of the middle as God has forgotten us, but God said, no, your middle's where I'm preparing you. Because at the end of the day, leadership requires more than vision. It requires character, it requires humility, it requires wisdom, and it requires emotional strength. And those things rarely, if at all, develop in comfortable seasons. Here's the truth that shows up again and again and again in Scripture. God often gives the promise before he gives the preparation. The preparation that you need usually happens in the middle. And all of those humility, character, wisdom, emotional strength, all of that stuff, that's developed in the middle. That's developed when nobody's calling you to preach somewhere. That's developed when nobody's giving you the promotion. That's developed when nothing seems to be working out, when life seems to be falling apart, when you got a vision before you, but nothing seems to be working. It's in the middle that you develop wisdom and humility, and character begins to grow, and life begins to grow, and change begins to happen, because God will give you the promise before he gives you the preparation. In other words, he gives you the dream, and then he wants you to get prepared. And the preparation, for whatever reason, it usually happens between point A and point Z, in the middle. The invisible, I would like to think about it like this: it is the invisible work of the middle. Another challenge of the middle is that you can feel invisible. You're doing the right things, you're being faithful, but it doesn't feel like anyone notices. I've dealt with this a lot in my life. And when people feel unseen long enough, they start wondering if their effort matters. Well, here's the kicker. You ready? Well, what's the point? Why am I still doing it? Why does it even matter? Why do I even take time to pray? Why do I even take time to read my Bible? Why do I even take time to do better on the job, to get there early and leave late? Because I'm trying to put it out there that I am a hard worker and that I do want things to happen. And when people when you feel like things aren't working out, you just begin to wonder, well, what's the point? But some of the most important things in life happen, and some of the most important things in life are built when nobody sees you, when nobody knows you're there. Think about the foundation of a building. People admire the design, the architecture, the details, but the strength of the building depends on something that you will never see. It's the foundation, it's what's below the dirt. And life works the same way. There are seasons where God is building a foundation inside of you. Discipline, faith, stability, spiritual maturity. That's the stuff that nobody sees. Oh, the building looks great, but what about the foundation? You can't build a $50 million building on a 10-cent foundation, because that $50 million building will fall. It'll fall. The Bible says the wise man built his house upon the rock, And the foolish man built his house upon the sand. For all points and purposes, they built the same building. They built in the same area. The only difference was the foundation. Because if your foundation, big buildings need deep foundations. Whatever God, if you know that God has something big in your life, you need to know that it's going to require a heavy, strong, deep, thick, rigid, time-tested foundation. Because the reality is that these things, the faith, the discipline, the spiritual maturity, the stability, these things rarely develop in moments of applause. My foundation isn't developing when there's applause. That was a great message, Pastor. Woo, that was wonderful. It's not if my foundation is developed when it's all by myself during the week and nobody's calling and nobody's reaching out and you're just having to navigate some stuff. That's where the foundation's developed. They develop in quiet seasons of consistency. You got to be consistent. Most people miss it because they're just not consistent. They'll do something 2 or 3 weeks and they'll quit. They'll quit. They'll stop. They won't do it no more. And here's something that I often tell people, and I think it's very important, is the part of your life nobody applauds are often the parts that build your future. And the middle is usually where the foundation is laid. Now, I want you to hear what I just said. The parts of your life that nobody's applauding you at 2 a.m. when you're praying. Nobody's applauding you when you're riding down the road trying to figure out what to do. Nobody's applauding you when the money's tight and you know you got to make budgets and you got to make this and you got to do that. Nobody's applauding you when you're trying to figure that out. It's just you by yourself and the Lord. You're trying to walk through this thing. Nobody's saying, "Oh, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job trying to figure this thing out." Nobody's applauding you there. But it's in the middle that the foundation is laid. It's in the middle that you begin to develop character. It's in the middle that you know, hey, God's been with me in this season and God's going to be with me in this next season. I think endurance is the skill that most people lack. I've never seen a generation lately, as of late, my generation, the one after me, maybe it was somewhat of the previous generation. We don't have the fortitude and the work ethic that a lot of our parents and grandparents had. And one of the most underrated qualities in leadership, faith, and life is that one word, endurance. Starting something takes inspiration, but finishing something takes perseverance. Anyone can begin the journey when the motivation's high. We leave in Egypt. Woo, let's go. Let's go. We leaving this place behind, but they get in the middle of the desert and all of a sudden, well, we had it better in Egypt. We should just go back to Egypt and die. Anybody can begin when the motivation is high, but endurance is what keeps people moving when motivation disappears. Everybody walks in on Sunday morning and sees how great it is, but not many people see what goes on during the week to get to Sunday morning. Most people see your new house or your new car and think, man, they just stepped into that. But what they don't know is the hours you put in to get it. How you worked on your credit, you worked on your finances, you worked on your bank accounts, you worked on everything. You worked getting your debt paid down. You're done whatever. Nobody applauds that. Nobody applauds when you're trying to pay off credit card debt or you're trying to pay off bills, or you're trying to get yourself financially stable. Nobody applauds that. They talk about it when it happens because they think, what does he do? Well, how does he deserve it? Nobody applauds the middle, but the middle is where the motivation takes place. The middle is where the endurance has to kick in. And I'll be honest, endurance is what keeps people moving when motivation disappears. You got to have something that motivates you when the endurance has to be there when the motivation leaves. The Bible speaks about perseverance constantly. James tells us, let perseverance finish its work so that we become mature and complete. That means endurance isn't just about surviving difficulty. Oh, I made it through. That's not endurance. Sometimes you're just strong. Endurance is where you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you do what you got to do. It's about producing something on the inside of us. Endurance is trying to produce that stability, that wisdom, that strength. And here's something worth remembering. Consistency over time will always beat talent. Consistency over time will always beat talent. It never fails. Many people with incredible ability. I mean, they can just wreck a room when they speak. They can do whatever they got to do. Never see their potential realized because they walk away too soon. I've seen people that God has the hand on their life. God's doing something in their home, their marriage, their job, whatever it is. It don't matter what it is. It can be just the small things. I've seen people that God's doing something in their life, and oftentimes they just quit too soon. Not because they failed. No, failure is that's very seldom why people quit. Failure is when you have no other option but to either start over or make it happen again, I guess. But the middle is because the middle is what causes them to quit because it felt longer than expected. Here's something I want you to remember is that breakthrough often lives just past the middle. Just on the other side of the middle is where your breakthrough is. When you study scripture closely, something interesting appears. Many miracles happen after moments when people could have easily given up. They were, man, they were close. I use the analogy of deer hunting and fishing, and especially hunting. I always try to get myself, especially when I'm hunting in the morning time. Nighttime, you got to go when the sun goes down because it's illegal. But in the morning time, you can stay all day and hunt if you want to. But I always if I'm hunting in the morning time and I'm not seeing nothing, all right, I'm gonna sit till 10:30, or I'm gonna sit till 11 o'clock. I'm gonna give myself 30 more minutes. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I've given myself just a few more minutes. Deers came out, turkeys came out, something's happened. Why? Because normally at the moment I want to give up is when I need to sit just a little bit longer. Think about the Red Sea. Israel is trapped between water in front of them and an army behind them. From a human perspective, from a humanistic view, everything looked like it was over. This was the end. But the miracle happened when they kept moving forward. Consider Jericho. For 6 days, the people marched around the wall. Nothing happened. No cracks, no movement, no dust falling, no nothing. No evidence at all that the wall was about to fall. Imagine how strange it must have been for Joshua for them to march around the wall 7 times. And you would think that something would begin to happen. Imagine how strange it had to feel to do that every day and go back to camp and every day and go back to camp. But they were only 7 days away from their miracle. That's all they were. And then they were 6 days away, and then they were 5 days away, and then they were 4 and 3 and 2 and 1, and then they were 24 hours away and 8 hours away and 1 hour away. What if they'd have quit on 6? What if they'd have quit on 6.5? There was no evidence that the wall was going to fall. There was no evidence that the Red Sea was going to part. There was no evidence that Pharaoh's army was going to die. But the breakthrough came after the final lap. Naaman dipped 7 times. The prophet said, go dip 7 times in the muddy Jordan and you'll come up clean. And he got upset about it. And the little servant girl, I call her Naamina, she said, basically what she said was, if the man of God would have asked you to do a hard thing, you'd have done it. But he just asked you to go dip 7 times, and wouldn't it be worth it if you came up clean? Wouldn't it be worth it if you came up clean? Would it be worth it if you came up changed? Sometimes the middle is closer than we realize, but the middle will always try to convince people that nothing is happening. Here's a thought that I have come to believe in life is that many people quit one step before the breakthrough they were praying for. My Lord, if we knew the amount of people that have just quit, that have just walked away, their marriage, their home, their job, their church, their ministry, their pastorate, whatever it was, if they'd have just hung in 24 more hours, if they'd have just stayed a little bit longer. I'm in my line of work. I deal with pastors. I talk to pastors, and I see pastors all the time that they'll go pastor a church and they'll quit, and they'll go pastor a church and they'll quit, and they'll go pastor a church and they'll quit. And people ask me all the time, well, when you first started pastoring, it was difficult. It was a difficult church to, not a bad church. It was just a lot of stuff that was put in place and different thoughts and different ideologies, and it's fine. It is what it is. It was just, God knew I needed to be with them, and God knew they needed to be with me, and I don't regret a mile. But I think about what if I'd have quit 4 or 5 years in? I had chances to go other places. Not a lot of people know it, but I was offered other churches. I was offered other ministries, larger churches, larger pay scales. And what if I'd have just said, oh, I'm done? Because I didn't have to fight. Nobody was making me stay. Nobody was making me stay and develop stress and anxiety and depression and not having a friend in the world. Nobody was making me do any of that. Nobody was making me fight all that stuff. I did it because I felt like I needed to do it. And the Lord I could have walked away any moment. I could have quit. But I kept telling myself just a little bit longer, and I'm still doing that at 20 some years later, 23 years later, 24, whatever it is now. I'm still telling myself just a little bit longer, something's coming. And you know what? Something eventually is coming, and we're seeing breakthroughs, and we're seeing deliverance, and we're seeing God. We're not the biggest. We may never be the biggest. It's all right. We may never have $1 million incomes coming in. That's okay. We may, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm not wanting to quit because I feel like that I'm close. I'm just, we get to where we're going and then God takes us somewhere else. We get to where we're going and God takes us somewhere else. The middle will always test whether we keep moving even when you can't see results. Noah built an ark. Well, ain't no rain. Build an ark, rain's coming. Build an ark, rain's coming. Preaching every day, rain's coming. And finally, one day he gets done and the rain begins to fall. So if I could give you some wisdom for in the middle, if you're in a middle season right now, there are a few things I think that'll help you stay steady. Number one, focus on consistency. A little step every day. Progress rarely comes from dramatic moments. It usually comes from faithful, small, concise, precise steps repeated over and over and over again. Same thing every day. Second, you got to stay spiritually connected. You can't get disconnected. Discouragement often tempts people to pull away from prayer and when it ain't working right. I ain't no point praying. Ain't no point getting them a Bible. It's just going to mess up again. But in the middle is when we need God present most of all. Strength for the journey comes from staying close to Him. Third, you got to guard your environment. The voices around you matter. Who speaks into your life matters. Encouraging voices strengthen endurance. Negative voices weaken it. Choose to stay around people who remind you why you started. My gosh, in heaven. That's a gifting when people come in your life and they remind you why you started this thing. Why did you start this thing? Why did you do this? They remind you of what your calling is. Let me say it again to you. Progress rarely comes from dramatic moments. Stay faithful. Stay consistent. Stay connected. Guard your environment. Be careful with the voices that come in your life. Voices matter. Voices. Nehemiah's on the wall building. He's got a hammer in one hand and a sword in the other. And the voices are coming. Come off the wall, Nehemiah. Come off the wall. If a fox comes by and brushes that wall, it'll fall down. But he could not allow the voices to stop him from doing what he knew he was called to do. So get voices in your life that encourage you and build you up. Not telling you that you're great, but telling you can make it. You're going to come out of this. You're going to be all right. And stay around those people who remind you why you started. Why are we doing this thing? Because there's a wall to build. Why are we doing this thing? Because I want my marriage strong. Because I want my job home. Because God gave me a business idea, and so I'm gonna see it through. I'm gonna see it through. So my throat held up, and I didn't cough but 2 times. Let me close with this thought: if God placed something in your heart, if God called you to build something, if God's starting to work in your life, if God's doing something in your home, your life, your job, your marriage, whatever it is, don't quit in the middle. The middle is uncomfortable, but it is also where growth happens. It's where faith matures. It's where faith matures, and it's where endurance forms. And sometimes it's where God is preparing you for something bigger than you expected. I want to tell you this, if you're hearing me today and you don't hear nothing else in this podcast, the middle is not the end of your story. It is the part of your journey where perseverance begins to shape the outcome. And oftentimes, the people who see the promise fulfilled are simply the ones who made a quiet decision along the way. And the quiet decision was this: in the middle of the night, they were laying in the bed. I will not quit. I'm going to keep on going, and I'm going to have perseverance in the middle. Hey, I love you. If this podcast has helped you today, if this little bit has grown you any at all, would you do me a favor? Would you like and share the content? We're trying to grow our audience. We're trying to get it bigger, but we need your help. And the way we get that is by you liking and sharing and subscribing to these channels and helping people know. If you know there's somebody that might need it, send it to them. Let them know that God's doing something. I love you. God bless you. Have a great, great day. We'll see you next week on Movement Conversations.